Hello and welcome to this third and final video installment for the book Rune Shamanism. Today we're going to be talking about the third 8. So if you haven't watched the first two DVDs about Rune Shamanism and you have not read the book Rune Shamanism, please go back, get the book, read that, and then watch the first and then the second. And you'll have a better understanding of some of the things I refer to in this third video. So I have to say once again, I have such respect for the runes. You know, I've done a lot of different shamanic research and practice in different paths. And you know, when I first started looking at the runes years ago, I made the assumption, as probably a lot of people do, I made the assumption that the runes were sort of like seed sounds for similar to Beeja mantras. If you're not familiar with what a Beeja mantra is, in Vedic Hinduism, there are short one-syllable words that contain a lot of power in them, and they're often attached to different mantras to increase or bring different aspects of power into the mantra. And so I sort of likened the runes to these seed or these Beeja mantras. And you know, the more that I work with them, the less that I have that feeling now. The runes are something very different. Yes, they're sacred sounds. Yes, they're technically seed sounds, but they're not like mantra. They're a whole different science. And you know, mantras deal with deities, and so when you chant a mantra, you're actually calling down a specific deity to come and literally sit on your head and, you know, vibrate the sound. And you know, so it's like working with an individual that wants to work with you. Now, not all mantras are going to be helpful. Sometimes, you know, you have to look at your astrological chart, Vedic astrological chart, and you have to look and see which planets are wanting to help you and which planets are here to give you challenges. But you can chant a mantra, and if it's aligned with planets that are working to make your life more challenging, then the mantra is going to make life challenging and perhaps make you sick, give you difficulties. You know, it's going to release karma in a different way. But the runes aren't like that. The runes, in my experience, are not like calling on a deity to come and work with you. They are principles. It's like unlocking, you know, it's superpowers. I mean, it's like you have to be careful. You can't play with it. You know, you got to be really careful with it, in my experience, especially if you gain a lot of power, they open up much more quickly. And I am reminded of this because when I did the second Rune Shamanism DVD for the second 8, you know, I gave some pretty clear warnings about, you know, if you want to chant this, go ahead, but, you know, just be prepared for some massive change. And sure enough, you know, I chanted them in that DVD, and as soon as I was finished, all kinds of stuff was let loose in my life. And it was good because it ended up being cleansing and healing and all that, but it made life pretty challenging. My computer crashed. I had to get a new computer. We had plumbing problems. You know, it turns out there was a tree that was growing roots into the plumbing and trying to climb up the septic system. I mean, it was... You know, so all of that is symbolic. When you do the second 8, you know, it's going to release that kind of cleansing, purifying, transformative power. And of course, I had emotional and physical experiences as well. So I'm excited to do the third set of runes, and I'm going to share with you my understanding of what that is. So, you know, as we said in the first 8, my experience, my belief, of course, the runes cannot be limited in this way, but I think generally speaking there is some truth to some of these classifications I'm sharing. The first 8 is about gathering energy. It's energy that's just coming into manifestation. So you have like Fehu and Uruz, which are clearly about gathering and empowering yourself with life force energy. And then you get to the second 8. And the second 8 are about taking, now that you've, the first 8, you've built up a lot of energy, but you can't have too much, because if it just keeps expanding, that's too much energy. That's what the giants are. The giants are life force energy that just keep expanding. And so you have to cut them down, put them back in their place so that they don't overrun everything. Just like when a garden or a forest, gets too overgrown, you got to go in there with a chainsaw and sometimes with fire, and you got to burn it out. So that's what the second 8 are. The second 8 start to chop, constrain, and minimize, and then purify the energy that you've brought in with the first 8. So then we get to the third 8. So now that you've purified this energy, now it can shine. And that's what I see with the third 8. So I'm going to go through that. So again, there's the background. So if you've done the second 8, perhaps you have had a cleansing experience to some degree. And so you know what I'm talking about. So let's start with the first rune in the third 8. And this is an amazing rune because it reaches back to the beginnings of the Indo-European people. So the first rune of the third 8 is Tee-Wahz. Now, Tee-Wahz is the god, as we know in Old English, Tyr in Old Norse. But Tyr is one of the most fundamental and quite possibly one of the most ancient gods ever worshipped in the world. And this is really important to understand the origin of Tiwaz and Tyr. Tyr in the latest manifestation of Germanic mythology is the god of warfare, the god of victory, and he is in constant battle with the gigantic wolf Fenris, who is seeking with his enormous infinite jaws to swallow up the entire universe. Fenris is so big and so powerful that nothing can stop him or hold him. Nothing. The only thing that keeps him bound up is a magical rope, which is a thread that's made up of nothing but pure subtlety. You know, the sound of cats walking, you know, those kinds of things. Things that are just ultimate in subtlety. That's the only thing that keeps him bound up. And as the story goes, Tyr, you know, the only way that that Fenris would allow himself to be bound by this rope, which, you know, the gods knew that it would be able to bind him, but they came to him and said, show us how strong you are. We're going to put this tiny little thread around you. And Fenris knew something was up. And so he says, okay, you can tie me up with that, but only if one of you puts your arm in my mouth. Idea being that if he can't get out, he's going to take their arm. And none of the gods would do it except for Tyr. Tyr volunteered, knowing that it would cost him his arm. And so he stuck his arm into Fenris's mouth. And of course, Fenris, once he realized he could not get out of that that rope, took Tyr's arm, clamped down and took his arm. This is symbolic because what it means is that Tyr is in constant battle with the forces of self-destruction. That's what Fenris is. He symbolizes self-sabotage, self-destruction, the destruction of the basest of instincts, the desire to consume everything, so addiction, treachery, all the things you can imagine, too much of everything. Tiw is the only one of the gods brave enough to sacrifice his arm. And so he's in constant battle with that. He's actually keeping Fenris from taking over and destroying the cosmos. So that's who he is in modern times. But Tiw, before his most latest incarnation, however you want to put it, he was actually the Sky Father. And he is so ancient, and this is important to understand because worshipping Tiw not only honors people of Northern European descent, but when you worship Tiw, you are worshiping all the way back to the first modern humans, maybe even earlier, who knows. Some people, scientists have come to the conclusion that speech was something that was evident within even proto-humans millions of years ago. There's a little bone in the throat that only has to do with using speech, vocalizing. Gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys don't have it. So only proto-humans or, those have this bone. This bone can be traced back to millions of years, to things that we thought were just basically monkeys. So this advent of speech goes way back. So who knows how long it's been that humans and proto-humans have been worshiping Tiw. But here's how you know how ancient he is. We know that Tiw is the Sky Father of the Indo-European people. And so whether it's in the Germanic languages or whether it's in Sanskrit, the language of the ancient Vedics, whether it's Greek or Roman, you have some variant of Tiw. In Greek, Zeus is actually a different declension. His name is Di, and the temple to Zeus is Dion, which means Di, the place of Di. And in the Vedic, it's Dyeus Pita, which again is Sky Father. So Sky Father is very prevalent. Now, as interesting as all that is, and if you're a follower of my works, you've already heard what I'm about to share with you, but it's an amazing thing. As it so happens, the ancient Sky Father for the shamanic indigenous religion of the Chinese people, of Taoism, the ancient Sky King, the celestial emperor who lives in the North Star, guess what his name is? Di. Same thing. Same deity. Now, the language of the Taoists, of the Chinese, is not Indo-European. And from what I understand, the first modern humans who made their way up and became the Chinese actually split off from the Proto-Indo-Europeans much earlier. So this goes back to a very ancient word for the Sky Father that both all of the Indo-European peoples and the ancestors of the Chinese people worship. That means that we're going back beyond 50,000 years. Who knows how long the first humans could have been worshiping the Sky Father as Di. This is this rune. And this is why worshiping this rune, chanting this rune, brings you victory. Because it is this power of the guiding force of the Sky Father who lives in the North Star. He has been guiding the human race from the very beginning, since Paleolithic times, before modern humans ever left Africa. He was being worshipped. This is the power. So understand, people want to use this rune for racialist reasons, and I'm not going to get into that, but just understand, you worship this rune, you are empowering all people, going back to the first modern humans who were most likely not white. They were probably dark-skinned Africans. So this is Tiw. This is the rune Tee-Wahz. Worshipping Tee-Wahz is about victory. It guides you through all of life's trials, multiple lifetimes. You know, if you're a human being and you've been reincarnated, you have worshipped Tee-Wahz in multiple facets in every single lifetime. That's how far Tee-Wahz stretches back, and that's how amazing and important he is. So that's Tee-Wahz, Tee-Wahz, the rune Tee-Wahz. Okay, so let's move on to the next rune. Next rune is also an amazing rune, and I want to say one of my favorites, but you know, they're all amazing. But this one does have a special place in my heart. And this rune is Berchtanaz. Now, I am pronouncing it a certain way because this is based on my research and my experience with the runes. I believe this was how it was originally pronounced. Berchtanaz. Berchtanaz is the birch tree. And the birch tree is one of the first trees that, as the ice was receding in the ice ages, this is one of the first trees that would pop up. This is the birch tree. The birch tree has to do with birth, has to do with cleansing. You know, the reason why witches have brooms is because brooms were powerful magical things. Why? Because they were made from birch bark. And birch bark was used to not only clean the home, but was used in rituals to clean because of the power of birch, which connected it to the goddess Berchta. Berchta, and birch not only means, you know, the tree birch, but Berchta means bright. And the reason why the birch tree and bright are the same word is because if you've ever lived in an area where you have to make fires, you know what birch bark does. It's a fire starter. So if you take birch bark and light it, it cracks and it popples and cracks. It cracks and it pops and it, you know, it's like fireworks. And this is Berchta. This is the power of the explosive power of birth. It's it's like a firework. You know, this is bright, brecht, bercht, Berchta. This is so. Berchtanaz means birch, but it also means bright. It means explosive, and it has to do, you know, with the bright, explosive power of the dawn as the sun comes up. These are all the things connected with Berchtanaz. So it's absolutely about a brand new beginning. Now, what's interesting about that is that Berchtanaz is not in the first 8. You would think birth, right, in the first 8, but no, it's we're talking about a spiritual rebirth, the birth from purely spiritual. So, you know, the first 8 are very physical. The second 8, you're going between physical and spiritual, and that's why it's so transformative. And the third 8 is all about pure spirituality. And so Berchtanaz is about a spiritual birth. I could go on and on and on about Berchtanaz, but that's enough to get started with for now. So let's go down to the next rune. The next rune is Ing+Wahz. Ing+Wahz is, again, a beautiful rune. I love that rune. Ing+Wahz, for me, just by saying the word Ing+Wahz gives me this sense of peace and relaxation. And it's the word for horse. It's the exact same word in Latin with a slightly different pronunciation. In the Germanic languages, it was Ing+Wahz. In Latin, it was Equus. Same word. Slightly different pronunciation. The horse in the Proto-Germanic tribal people's mind was extremely sacred. And in prehistorical times, the Germanic tribespeople had special sacred groves where they would put horses that were white without any blemish. And these horses were never ridden or used for work. They were used only for divination. And the priests would listen, they'd send out prayers and do rituals and, ask the gods questions, and then they would listen to the horses, either, stamping of the feet or the noises that they made. And they knew how to interpret what the messages were. And, of course, this has a connection to Odin's horse. I have to share something. These are really great symbolic understandings of the rune. Very beautiful. Everybody can understand that. But, there was a period of time when I was living I lived in the country, and I was living across the street from some people who had some horses in their front yard, right across the dirt road there. And I had a sacred space out in my front yard that, I had trees and all that, and I created my own little sacred grove, and I would do my rituals out there at night. And when I worked with Woden and prayed to him, and I'd be doing my rituals to him, those horses would respond. I mean, I would ask Odin a question, and the horse would respond. I get chills thinking about it. And it was like the first couple times you're like, okay, but then it was just like, this is unmistakable. There's something to this. It's more than just some kind of, some cute little symbolic poetic meaning. There's some real connection that horses have with Odin. So that's something to be aware of. So, what does the horse do? The relationship between horse and rider is that the horse and the rider become like one being. And if you've ever ridden a well-trained horse, you don't even have to tell that horse what to do. And I've had this experience where I remember as a kid, as a teenager, my girlfriend had, she was a competitive horse, whatever, and she said, sit on the horse. And I'm like, I've never sat on a horse. It's like, okay. I'm like, well, I don't know how to steer it. She says, you don't have to worry about it. Just sit and think about where you want to go. And I would sit on the horse, and I wouldn't do anything. I would just think about where I wanted to go, and that horse would go right where I was thinking, So I had a very real experience about that. And this is the connection between the shaman and the gods. That when a shaman has gone through the first 2 eights of the runes and purified themselves and had this rebirth in Berchtanaz, they are now, their channels are open. The meridians are open, their channels are open, and the gods can ride them. And that's the idea, that the gods steer you. You can even think about it the other way around, that you're riding the gods. And just like that well-trained horse, you can just be thinking about where you want to go, and the gods will take you there, and vice versa. If you're working and you want to serve the deities, same kind of thing. If you're that open, then the idea is that the gods will guide you in your service or in your path or in your life or whatever it is. But the idea is definitely to channel this power, divine power of Ing+Wahz. And, I do get such a sense of peace when I chant that rune. I get such a, maybe it's just opening up and allowing divine energy to flow through me. I'm not really sure. I'm sure I'll learn as I go. But that's my experience with Ing+Wahz. So, let's move on. Let's go to the next rune, which is Mahn-Ahz. Great rune, and very important for human evolution. Mahn-Ahz means man. Now, it's interesting, we have to look at what the meaning of man is. What does that word mean? Nowadays, we think man means adult male human, but that's not what its original meaning was. The Proto-Germanic word for adult male human was ver. In Latin, it's, you get the word virile. You also have it in Sanskrit as well, that same root. and it means masculine. So somebody who's virile is masculine. So that was originally the word for adult male human, but the word man applied to all human beings, male and female. And that's because human beings are Mahn-Ahz. They are mind. The word man means mind. You find it in Sanskrit. Mahn-Ahz means mind. But it also means moon. Mani is the Old Norse for moon. In Old English, it's mone. And, you know, the Anglo-Saxons had a tendency to take ah sounds and make o sounds out of them. So mane became mone, which we now say moon. But it means mind. And Mahn-Ahz in Indo-European mythology, in the Vedic and in the Germanic, was the first human being. What that means is that, however you want to look at it, you know, if you want to believe that human beings were created out of nowhere, then he was the first one. If, like me, you think that human beings come from evolved, you know, we're an ape. We're a highly evolved ape. At some point in our evolution, the gods decided to give these proto-humans the power of divine mind. Whether that happened gradually or instantaneously, I don't care. But that's what we are. We are divine mind in human flesh. Now, the moon is the divine mind because why? Because it reflects the sun. What is the sun? The sun is the soul. You can't look directly into the sun or you'll burn your eye sockets. You can look at the moon all you want because you can look at the reflection of the soul. And so it means that human beings, we are here to reflect divinity. Now, you don't get there right off the bat. You have to go through first the first aid and then the second aid before you can even get to the place of divine mind. But there's a lot of things I could say about it, but we'll talk about that in advanced Rune Shamanism. But that's Mahn-Ahz. Mahn-Ahz is, you know, it's when you're all physical and mental and now spiritual. You have all of these things together. Now you can call yourself Mahn. If you haven't achieved that, then you're not Mahn yet. You're either a dwarf or a thirst. But when you get to this stage in your evolution, you've gone through almost all of the runes, and you're almost halfway through the last 8 of the runes. Now you can say you're Mahn-Ahz. We'll talk about that, but saying that rune just puts me in a very dynamic, meditative state. And I believe that is the rune of not only magic, but of meditation as well. So let's move on to the next rune. So the next rune is Law-Gooz. Now, this is an interesting place for Law-Gooz. Law-Gooz means lake, and it has to do with deep bodies of water. It has to do with the ocean, waters in general. The Germanic tribes people felt water was incredibly sacred. And, you have rituals where people would be drowned ritually in lakes. And these were priests and priestesses who followed Nahz, who, was a very powerful goddess, and there were priests and priestesses who were devoted to her, and she ruled over lakes and bodies of water. And there were, even if tribes were warring with each other, when the priests would come through with the wagon that carried the ritual aspects of Nahz, everybody would stop. That's the respect they had for this goddess. Lots of respect and fear. And so there were priestesses who, after those, this parade, they'd go through all of, different, Germanic nations with this power of Nahz. Then the priestesses would be ritually drowned. And they did this voluntarily. They wanted to be one with Nerthúj. There's also records of criminals who were sacrificed to Nerthúj and buried, in lakes and bodies of water. Now, all of this sounds, when I share this, again, this is all we know, from historical writing. So who knows how much truth is in it, or how it's been skewed, or who knows what. But let's just assume, for argument's sake, that this is true. This means that our ancestors had this understanding that when something needed to be purified on the deepest level, this was the power of deep water, the power of Nerthúj. This was this power that was called upon. And water was used like this in many other ways. And Law-Gooz, when it's connected to the ocean, is about the unconscious and emotions. And so the reason why this is so interesting in this phase of the runic progression is that it means that when you've passed the point of being Mahn, truly human, divine mind, you have mastery over all of your emotions, even the unconscious ones. The things that are just, if you've ever looked at the ocean on an overcast day, it's just black. And it's a very scary thing. So this is us peering into our unconscious, the emotions in our unconscious. So Law-Gooz is the depth of emotions going all the way down. Law-Gooz also has to do with law. And the god for law was Njord, the god of the oceans. Again, probably the male aspect of Nerthúj. Nerthúj is the Latin pronunciation of the goddess. So it was probably Njord and his wife, which we know of as Nerthúj. But these are the powers of the unconscious emotion, and the law that's there, is incredibly mysterious and powerful, and it has that, that the unconscious cannot be conquered. It can be mastered, but it can never be conquered. And so we want to have this depth of our unconscious to be in alignment. And it's interesting because if you look at the same runes in the same placement, the first two, these are runes of either right order or of transformation through life through death. So this is a state of being willing to die, being willing to sacrifice yourself and die and face your deepest unconscious feelings and emotions and fears. And so very mysterious and powerful rune. And it for me, I'll definitely need to meditate more about the placement of this rune and what it means. But so far. So moving past Law-Gooz, we go to the next rune, which is Ing+Wahz. Ing is the Proto-Germanic pronunciation for the fire god. And this is not an external fire god, this is the god of spiritual fire. All Indo-European languages at one point in time had two words for fire. Fire, and then, which would be the external fire that you light in your fireplace, and then Ing, which would be the internal or the spiritual fire. We still have this word in Latin and Greek with words like ignition, And the only difference is that ign and ing, the N and G are transposed. In one rendition of the Proto-Indo-European. Bear in mind, the word Proto-Indo-European is a reconstructed language. Linguists are trying to reconstruct, and they're doing a lot of the same things I'm doing. They're comparing and looking at different pronunciations, and they're trying to, reverse engineer where the language came from. According to them, the original pronunciation for the internal spiritual fire was Ink. Ink, and I think there was something else attached to it. So it's interesting, the Germanic language retains, according to them, the oldest pronunciation for the internal fire. Now, what's interesting about that is that these same linguists do not use the runes for their study. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some out there that have done this, but I was doing some research, and I had made the obvious conclusion between Ing and the Sanskrit Agni and the Greek and Latin Igni, and thought, oh, this is the same word. Ing, Agni, Igni. Obviously the same word for internal spiritual fire. But I'm reading, and this guy says nothing about it, which tells me that modern linguists don't use the runes as a source, which doesn't make any sense. The Germanic languages were first written in the Futhark. And it's well understood that there's a lot of old language connected to it. I mean, for instance, the Rune Perthro. The Rune Perthro, people don't know what it means. It's such an old word. So that lets you know that this has been, part of Germanic language for hundreds, thousands of years. So why wouldn't you use this as a source to understand Indo-European language? Anyway, I talk about that at length. I won't rant on about that. But that's what Ing is. Ing is the spiritual fire. We still have a word almost never used in English called the Ingle-Nook. And the Ingle-Nook is the fireplace. And to this day, especially if you go and find some really old historical buildings like in England, I forget which one it was. There's still one building that's still around. I think that was a royal residence for, way back in the Middle Ages. But if you go, the fireplace is still there, and carved into the mantle of the fireplace is the Ing rune over and over again. You can find today still in places like England and in Germany where the Ing rune will be painted onto the fire, onto the chimney. So you can walk by the outside of the house, you'll see the Ing rune on the chimney. So clearly we have this connection between Ing and fire. And in the pre-Christian polytheist homes, the fireplace was a place not only where you warmed the house, but it's where you cooked the food. It's where people sat and gathered, to listen to stories and to, it was the hearth of the home. And we still, to this day, we do things like put pictures of our ancestors, our grandparents and our great-grandparents, where? On the mantelpiece. When our kids go off and get an award, we go, oh, I'm going to put that on the mantelpiece. Why? Because the fireplace of the home was a sacred place. It was the place where we also sent up prayers to the gods. You'd burn incense and do all those kinds of things, and the smoke would go up to the gods. This is Ing, the god of internal spiritual fire. And, Ing has a strong connection with the god Frey. And people think that his name is Ing. So nowadays people will mix up Ing and Frey and think it's the same thing. But that's not what it means. Ing+Nar Frey means, Nar is a Germanic word for Lord. It means, in fact, it's an Indo-European word. It's in Sanskrit as well. Nar means first cause. The first cause deity in the Vedic Hindu tradition is Narayana. And human beings are Narayan, and so it has that first cause. Lord, master, whatever, but it means spiritual master. So Ing+Nar Frey means that Frey is the master of Ing. And what is Ing? Ing is what yogis would call the Kundalini fire within the body that sends up, rises up the chakras and comes out the top of the head. And so Frey, and that's why Frey is, is often seen in a meditative position. And it's also seen why he has an erect phallus, because sexual energy has a close connection to this this internal spiritual fire. And so he's always 100% completely immersed in this fire. He is mastered. His Kundalini has completely opened up, and he's completely connected on that level. And so he is Ing+Nar, the Lord of Ing. And Ing has the, by the time we get to this point in the runes, the energy has moved through the runes and now it's building up strength. And so this is pure spiritual energy now. This isn't the same kind of strength that's building up, say, when you get to the Tee-Wahz rune, the yew tree. That's a different kind of explosion. That's an explosion which purifies and gets rid of, the excess. Now you've purified all of that energy, and now it comes through, and by the time you pass through Law-Gooz and you've mastered the unconscious, now this spiritual fire begins to build up an energy, and it's like an egg that's ready to explode. And what happens? We go into the next rune, which is Die-Yahz. So Die-Yahz is the word for day. The G sound is oftentimes not pronounced, but in German it's Tag, Guten Tag, good day. Die-Yahz, Die-Yahz, same. And if you look at the shape of the rune, it looks kind of like an explosion. And so this is what's happened. Energy has moved through. We've gone through the power of Ing, and it's built up, this energy, and then daylight, it explodes. And what is daylight? Daylight is the power of the sun, which is a star. Again, we're dealing with celestial, divine power. This third set of runes is all about taking all this power that's been purified and projecting it. And that's what day is. This energy just explodes out in all directions, projecting its light, its bliss, its freedom. So when I look at this rune, I see freedom, I see happiness, I see the bliss that comes from just being lost in that bliss of pure divine expression. And this is Die-Yahz. And it's interesting now because now the energy is coming to the place where, once the energy has been fully expressed, which is what Die-Yahz is, it's fully expressed energy, then it can only do one thing, which is come back in on itself. But that's where we're at now. We've come to the point now where this celestial energy has moved through and is now just in full expression of the midday sun. So that's Die-Yahz. So as I said, now we move into the last and final rune, which is Owe-Thall. And so Owe-Thall is, if you look at the symbol, energy is coming back into the ground. It's rooting itself back into the ground. And Owe-Thall means inheritance. And oftentimes it was referred to the ancestral home. And so this was the thing that you owned. This was your inheritance. This was your family had lived there, your grandparents, great-grandparents. So there was all of this ancestral power and tradition. And so this is why it's connected to homeland. Now, a lot of people use it for political or national or racial, and obviously there's going to be some connection to that. But what it's really talking about is it's talking about this spiritual inheritance. Owe-Thall means inheritance. Ethel, the word Ethel. The woman's name Ethel means inheritance, divine inheritance. And so the energy now, it's, in the third eight is the expression, the pure expression of spiritual energy. By the time it gets to Die-Yahz and has this full, complete, explosive expression, there's only one thing left for it to do, which is come back and ground itself. So Owe-Thall is all of the power of the runes come together. Owe-Thall contains everything. All of the previous 23 runes is embedded in Owe-Thall. And, you know, this is the way energy works. You know, the way the universe, we think, works is that, you know, the Big Bang, energy explodes and then contracts back in and does it again, over and over again. Now, I don't know if that's the modern scientific understanding now, but that's the spiritual understanding. You know, we go through, you know, life expresses itself and then comes back in on itself and then is reorganized and is born again. You know, reincarnated is you know, the human being. You know, so Owe-Thall is about, once you've reached that, the highest possible potential, there's only one thing left to do, which is energy comes back in on itself and then goes through the process all over again. So this is the power of Owe-Thall. Owe-Thall, for me, is a very grounding rune. And so just to chant the O of Owe-Thall, very grounding, brings you back down into your body. But what you're doing now is you're reintegrating and you're taking all this energy and you're grounding it within yourself. So, you know, you've probably heard about Kundalini energy, and I'm going to briefly mention it here. Most people are only aware of one half of the cycle of Kundalini. People will talk about Kundalini opening and going all the way up the spinal column and out the crown chakra, and they think that's it. But that's only half the process. True Kundalini awakening means that the Kundalini energy has been awakened, opens up the crown chakra, and then goes all the way back down, back through all of the chakras, back to the root chakra. And then you've had a complete Kundalini awakening. Listen, you can have your Kundalini awakened and opened up, and you know that's kind of meaningless if you stay there, because then you have to reintegrate all of that energy. You know, you're useless on the physical plane if that's all that happened. You know, people talk about Kundalini awakening and they had the high experience. Congratulations, I'm happy for you. Were you able to ground it? Were you able to bring it back and ground it? That's the true sign of a spiritual master, is somebody who's been able to do that. And then once you do that, you don't have to walk around being all spiritual all the time. You're now back on earth, and you can be a normal human being. But instead of being a human being who's trying to make their way up the ladder, you're now somebody who can radiate this spiritual power for other people. And, you know, a true master is humble. A true master doesn't go around, you know, having to prove to everybody. You know, a true master does not have thousands of students who worship him or her and think, you know, this is something that this is very modern. It's a very modern understanding where we worship our spiritual teachers. And that happened, you know, right around the time of Christianity. Before that time, you know, a true wizard was just as human as everybody else. The only difference is that he or she had a lot of power. And so you could have good wizards or bad wizards. It didn't, you know, it was a power just like anything else. You know, somebody who's strong, somebody who's smart. You know, these are all powers. Those guys happen to work really hard. You know, you go to the gym and lift weights, you can look like Lou Ferrigno after, you know, decades of lifting weights 5-6 hours a day. Doesn't make him anything more human than anybody else. He just put a lot of effort into having big muscles. Same thing with the wizard or the spiritual master. He spent hours or lifetimes, you know, many hours or many lifetimes building up this spiritual energy. When he reaches that, he's at Owe-Thall. All of it, he's expressed it all, and now he's grounded it back down, and it's available to him or her to use. But is a source of comfort and peace and safety. And not only that, but is the record keeper for human beings. So you go to the wizard, you go to the master of Owe-Thall to reconnect and to learn not only, you know, the stories, but to have the energy. And this is the last thing I'll say. You know, this is why spiritual teachers transmit energy to their students. And this is why lineage is so important. When you join a lineage, you are connecting to not only the teacher's energy, but the energy of the masters who have taught the teacher. So this is Owe-Thall as well, the spiritual inheritance. And this can only be done by staying connected to the ancestors. One of the main things that modern human society has done to destroy itself is to disconnect itself from the ancestors, because that's where all the power is. So this is Owe-Thall. And hopefully by practicing the runes you can reconnect. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your racial, cultural, spiritual background is, none of that matters. You work with these keys to the universe, which we call the runes. You will connect all the way back to the first human beings who worshipped the sky father Tiwaz. So, okay, so those are all the runes. Now, let's do a recap before we get into the chanting of them. So, recapping the runes, let's go through again. The first 8, we're gathering life force energy and expanding it. And once we've expanded all of that energy, then we have to then start trimming away the excess and purifying it. Otherwise, what happens? Things get stagnant and they get diseased and all that kind of stuff. So then we go through the second 8 of the runes, which is constrictive and then purifying, and then leads us, the last of the second 8 is Sawal, which connects us the beginning of spirituality. So we've gathered and purified energy, and now it's ready to be expressed completely on the spiritual level. And now we have the third 8. And the first thing we do is we connect with Tee-Wahz, the Sky Father, and the North Star, who guides us. And so we connect with that ancestral guide who's guided all of the human race from the very beginning. And this power now, the celestial power that we've connected to with Tee-Wahz, is now ready to take birth. And so like birch bark thrown into a fire, it explodes with this beautiful, by the way, have you seen the colors? This is amazing. If you take birch bark and throw it in a fire, watch the colors that come out as it pops and crackles. Blue and green, it's magical. It's really wonderful. And this is what happens. Our spirit explodes with this, like a firework, this power as it takes birth, and it cleanses on a spiritual level. This is why the Berchtanaz was the deity who cleansed all of the villages, and they still do this. It's Berchtanaz in Austria. In the Alps, they still do it now. You know, every Christmas time they go through and people put on the masks, and the mask is Berchtanaz, the fierce aspect of Berchtanaz, which is how she looks to anything demonic, which is again, you know, the impurity. But to those who see her for who she truly is, she's this beautiful, wonderful mother. So it depends on where you're at. This is Berchtanaz. So this is celestial power that's cleansing and purifying. And then we move to Ing+Wahz. Once we've taken birth in this celestial paradise, then we are able to connect directly to the powers of the deities and have them guide and guide us. We become one with the deities, just like rider and horse become one. And then once we have that energy, we're now connected directly to the infinite celestial power of the deities. Now, for the first time, we become Mahn, human, divine mind, and divine mind that's able to focus and manifest. I mean, the word manifest, I mean, it's just, there's no coincidence for these things. The power of true mind, complete mind. This power moves us into and gives us control over the deepest, darkest aspects of the unconscious emotions. And so now we're able to master our emotions instead of having our emotions master us. I'm a surfer, and the ocean is very dynamic. And, if you ride a wave, which is symbolic of riding the emotions, as opposed to having them do what happens if you're not successful and you try and surf a wave and you fall. If it's a big wave, you get tossed around in this washing machine, and it's really awful. And that's what our emotions do to us. They toss us around if we're not mastering them. So the mind, Mahn-Ahz, gives you power to master the unconscious emotions. And then we get to Ing+Wahz, where all this spiritual energy now starts to congeal, and it starts to incubate. Incubate. It starts to incubate, and the power starts to grow. And it's like, something's going to happen. It's growing to explode into Die-Yahz, which is the full expression of the celestial spiritual power of the human being. And once we've had that complete expression of Die-Yahz, then there's only one place for the energy to go. Falls back in on itself, comes back in and grounds itself into the earth, and then you have connection to the inheritance of what it is to be a human being. And so now we've gone through all of the 24 runes, and we've completely gone through all of the aspects of what it is to be a spirit that has taken form in flesh, this human life. This is the full expression. And I'm going to state this again. I don't see the runes like mantras. They're not just magical things, and they're not arbitrary. Let me state that again. These are not arbitrary meanings that our ancestors, hey, this is a nice thing, let's make a symbol and a meaning for that. That's not at all what happened. This is a science, and the runes exist independently in the universe. And they're the immutable laws of how life, consciousness, how it functions. And when we chant the runes, we are releasing that power. If you've done the second eight, chanted the second eight, you know what I'm talking about. But that's what these are. These are, I have to tell you, I think long and hard before I chant the runes, because I know I'm releasing these powers into a manifested reality. And so I have to be very clear. And they're not powers like they're not deities, they're not entities. They're laws, immutable laws of spirit power. And they're keys to the universe. So I treat them with respect, and I don't throw them around unless I'm really prepared for what they're going to do. This is especially true if you have a spiritual discipline. If you practice any qigong or meditation, or work with life force energy, and you clean yourself out and you open your meridians, and you become more of a channel. So those are the last 8 of the runes, the sacred keys to the universe as discovered by our ancient ancestors. So now we're just going to go straight into the chanting of the runes. So get yourself prepared, and let's get right into the chanting. Now we're going to move into the chanting of the last 8 of the runes. And I've got my candle here in front of me because it, for me, is very symbolic that these last 8 of the runes are really about shining forth brightly the pure essence of the celestial divinity that is within us and is our birthright. So before you chant these runes, it's a good idea to have in mind something that you would like to have these runes affect, something in your life. Do you want more success? Do you want more spiritual clarity, whatever it is. These runes are about shining forth brightly and projecting spiritual power. So it's good to have something to have these energies moving towards. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start, and we're going to do each one of the runes 3 times. So, as before, you sit very comfortably, whether you're sitting in a chair or lying down or even standing. Most important thing is that you're relaxed and comfortable, and that your spine is comfortably straight. And if you're not lying down, what you want to do is make sure that you bring your chin down. You're not tensing it up. You're just letting it come down, because you don't want your chin like this. This is the worst thing you can do for chanting. You want to have your chin come down like you're maybe holding a tennis ball here, so that the back of the neck can be straight while you do the chanting. And so let's just relax, getting ready. Bring to mind what it is you'd like to have improve or flow more freely in your life, burning brightly. And let's just breathe long and deep, taking a deep breath, inhaling that light into your entire body, exhaling. Once again, inhaling. And exhaling. One last time. Inhale. And exhaling. Relaxing yourself, hands comfortably resting on your knees. Let's start with the first rune of Tee-Wahz. Ready? Inhale very deeply. Once again, inhale. One last time, inhale. Inhale very deep. Hold this breath. Let the power of this North Star shine brightly within you. The power of Tee-Wahz, the Sky Father, who guides human beings throughout lifetime after lifetime to their highest destiny, to their nature as celestial beings. And exhale. Now just breathe for a moment, inhaling and exhaling, allowing this power of the North Star to shine brightly within you. May it shine success upon all of your endeavors, personal, business, romantic, whatever the endeavors are that you've got most on your mind, may the power of Tiwaz shine brightly upon it. Okay, moving to the next rune of Berchtanaz. Inhale very deeply. Inhale more time. One last time, inhale. Inhale very deeply and hold it. Imagine this power of Berchtanaz exploding, bringing birth and new life to all aspects of your existence. Healing, cleansing, driving out the last vestiges of any negativity. Bringing new life and a new beginning to your spiritual essence. And continue breathing long and deep. Inhaling and exhaling. Thanking Mother Perchta for her tremendous love and power and nurturing guidance. Okay, moving on to the next rune of Ing+Wahz. Inhale very deeply. Inhale a second time. Inhale a third time. Inhale very deeply and hold. Allow yourself to move with this energy of Ing+Wahz, allowing yourself to either mount this spiritual power which will launch you into your path, or allowing the gods to mount you. Exhale and release. Just continue breathing long and deep. Imagine yourself being one with this horse, the horse of Odin, which is Sleipnir, which has the power to transport us to any of the 9 worlds. We are at one with this spiritual force of Ing+Wahz. Moving on to the next rune, which is Mahn-Ahz. Inhale very deeply. Mahn-Ahz. Inhale once again. One last time, inhale. Inhale very deeply and hold. And allow yourself to become Mahn-Ahz, man, human, divine mind, reflecting the spirit. Exhale and release. Continue to breathe long and deep, absorbing and manifesting this power of Mahn-Ahz, the true divine mind that reflects the light of the Spirit. Moving on to the next rune, which is Law-Gooz. Inhale very deeply. Inhale once again. One last time, inhale. Inhale very deeply and hold. Allowing yourself to sink deep within yourself to the depths of Law-Gooz, to the depths of your emotions, to the foundation of all of your unconscious feelings. Exhale. Continue breathing long and deep. With the power of Mahn-Ahz, we are able to master and have access to our deepest unconscious feelings and emotions. And we are able to ground deeply the power of spirit into our deepest parts of our minds. Moving on to the next rune of Ing+Wahz. Ready, inhale. Inhale a second time. last time, inhale. Inhale very deep. Allowing this power of internal spiritual fire to incubate within us, to gain strength, to gain power, seeking to express, energy building and building to express in a giant release of spiritual energy. Exhale. Continue to breathe long and deep. Allowing the power of internal fire, spiritual fire to fill your whole body, making your body a living sacrifice to the gods. Burning away any residual, unnecessary energy, turning it to ash, the smoke rising to heaven. And moving on to the next rune of Die-Yahz, allowing this energy now to completely express itself, inhaling very deeply. Inhale a second time. Inhale one last time. Inhale very deep and hold it. Allowing this energy to explode up from within you, from the heart center, like the sun shining from the height of midday out into all of creation. Release, exhale. Continue breathing long and deep. On the exhale, allow this energy to expand outward, shining into all the reaches of the manifested cosmos. Inhaling and exhaling. One last time, inhale and exhale. And exhale. Moving now to the last and final rune of Owe-Thall. Inhale very deeply. Once again, inhale. Owe-Thall. last time, inhale. Inhale very, very deeply and hold it. Imagine the power of all the runes coming together in this last rune, consolidating in your body and grounding you into the earth with all the power of the ancients, stretching all the way back to the first human beings. Release the breath. Continue to breathe long and deep. Exhale, sending this energy down into the earth, grounding you. One last time, inhale. Exhale, grounding and consolidating all of the runes into your body, into your flesh, into your cells, and down through your feet into the earth. This time, take your hands right over left, interlocking here in between the thumb. Take your hands, place them over your navel center. Breathing long and deep. Allowing your body to absorb and ground all of this energy. Now you have within you all of the power of all the runes. All of the keys, the laws which govern the universe are within you and are at your fingertips. You arm yourself with the proper honor and respect for these ancient, eternal, and sacred powers. Go ahead and rub your hands together. You can massage your face, back of the neck, front of the neck, massage your chest and your body, get yourself back into your body. Now, at the end of this, what I'd like for you to do after this chanting is to get up and either take a walk, if you can take a walk outside. If not, continue to stay in a quiet, sacred space, just allowing this energy to move through your body and thinking about the ways in which you would like to see your true self shine out into this world and manifest your true spiritual essence, your true orlog, your true origin law. When you've done that, you don't have to come back today, but we have one final thing to take a look at, which is something I promised I would share with you. So when you're ready, come back for that. Okay, so I promised that I would teach you a secret way of chanting the runes. We've done it out loud now. And doing it out loud is extremely powerful and will empower you on all levels. And you can use, when you chant something out loud, it usually affects external reality, sometimes your immediate reality. But this is one of the ways that magic is done. When you speak things out loud, you can affect material existence. There's another way, which I believe is a very ancient, forgotten method. I've seen it in other traditions, and I believe that it was part of the ancient Germanic tradition as well. The word rune means secret mystery, as we know, but it also means whisper. So there's no coincidence in my mind that the name of the runes is also how they're meant to be chant it. Now there's a specific way of whispering it. I don't mean whisper like this. That's not what I mean. A very powerful way of chanting, and if you followed my teachings on the Hool breath, then you've already learned how to do this, or at least you've heard me talk about it. And what it is, it's a way of chanting without engaging the vocal cords. And the way the breath exits is not just through the mouth. It's through the nose and the mouth at the same time. Now, it may be very difficult to figure it out at first, and don't try and rack your brain. Just let it come. Just do your best, and really don't try and worry about it. But when it does happen, you'll feel it, and you'll be able to replicate it, and you'll feel yourself immediately go into a very deep trance. And the way the breath works is as you inhale, you inhale through the nose. And I'm going to chant Owe-Thall. And when you chant it, I'm letting air come out of my nose and my mouth at the same time. And you saw it just immediately puts me into this deep trance. My eyes go up, go up in my head and focus on the third eye. Very powerful shamanic breath. So this is the secret way of chanting the runes, and it is, I believe, where the name came from, whisper. So practice with that. When you want to reach a very deep level of meditation and you want to access the runes on a very deep primordial level, this is the way to do it. Go ahead and experiment with it. As always, you must treat these runes with respect. I can't overemphasize that. These, as I said, these are not just mantras. These are not arbitrary sounds. These are the sounds of the universe, and they're maybe one of the most ancient spiritual technologies known to mankind. So treat it with respect and with honor. And what you can definitely expect by chanting the runes is personal evolution. You will evolve. No two ways about it. So there's really nothing left to say. That's it for this last installment of the book Rune Shamanism. We will continue to make video teachings for the other two rune books, Rune Divination and Advanced Rune Shamanism. And I do recommend that you read those books first before watching the videos. And all of my other works and books can be found on the link at the top of Thunder Shamanism. And you can also find the majority of my books and videos on the homepage if you scroll down to the bottom of thunderwizard.com. So thundershamanism.com or thunderwizard.com. Until that time, my friends, may the light of the Aesir, the light of the celestial divinities, shine brightly through you to all of creation, sending waves of healing and evolution to all sentient beings. So it is commanded, so it shall be done.